Dune Awakening just got some brand new patches and updates. That'll lead us onto some developer insights, where yes, that does include some brand new info on PVE dungeons, as well as some future additional content. That'll lead us over to some last minute mentionables from the community, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World of Utopia, here back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Dune Awakening. So first up here, we did get some brand new hotfixes and patches. That does include point 11 all the way to point 14. Where first up here on June 10th, we saw some brand new fixes deployed. That was to further optimize and improve the game server and client stability. They've also added some more localization. There was some smaller fixes here with the UI being showed the name of the siege. That was when visiting in streamer mode. It also seemed like there was an issue where players could sometimes see selected NPC offsets from their normal position, and that essentially just means an NPC might be glitched in the air, they might be in a different location, which actually did make it worse because the game logic would actually have them in the correct location. So it was just a visual bug where you could see the NPC in a different location, but then you'd have to talk to them in their original location, so it did make it a bit confusing. There was also a rare issue where players with above minimum hardware specs would see a pop-up warning that their hardware was below minimum specifications. Seems like that has now been adjusted. That's usually for Intel GPUs, so that was probably what it was for. Next up here, we had two patches deployed on June 13th, and that was point 13 and point 14. First up here, they made several back-end changes to improve the client and server stability. To avoid too many spoilers, there was a contract where you could betray somebody, and it essentially meant that you couldn't retake contracts after betraying this person, which was major to the plot points there, so they have gone ahead and removed that. They've also fixed the Plantologist Advanced issue. Essentially, if you defected from Atreides faction, you couldn't progress, meaning that if you left Atreides to go to Harkonnen. Now they have fixed that, and they've updated the dialogue lines there. We had some naming and description issues here where players couldn't change the description of their guild, the name of the Sub-Thief Council, or a base blueprint. Now you should be able to do all three. This should help some people with their performance issues, but essentially there is a limit CPU usage graphic option that was not affecting all quality presets, and now that should do so regardless of which one you're on. So hopefully for those with low-end CPUs or just wanting to limit that overall, that should be fixed. There was one additional hotfix deployed on June 13th, and that was one that prevented players from traveling back from Arakan and Harko Village, which was the Error P83. It seems like this was mostly happening for people using the trade post. I noticed this happening a ton on the Discord side of things. I was very wary on visiting Arakan or even Harko. However, it seemed like it was okay as long as you went to the edge of the map. If you didn't know, you can use an ornithopter to go to the edge of the map and still go to Harko Village or Arakan. That will help you avoid the $2,500 charge from trade posts. So you don't actually have to go to trade posts to get to Arakan or Harko Village. You can use an ornithopter and you can get there via the edge of the map. That doesn't just take you to the deep desert. They also fixed an issue that caused disconnects when traveling between server borders in the deep desert. So yeah, all that stuff's been fixed now. You should be able to use that section of the world map. That does cover it as far as the patch notes side of things go. We'll have to wait and see if they do release any others. Although because it is the weekend, I guarantee we won't get anything until Monday on. Moving on, I know I did mention that there was going to be some PvE content and additional things there for the future of Dune Awakening. Now we had a community post here, but this was answered by developers. So it starts off here, I hope they add more endgame content for PvE stuff, not just PvP, which I definitely 100% agree with. I do like the deep desert, but it is a bit boring as a solo player. I have recently joined a guild, but I haven't checked it out too much. I have heard mixed feelings, but it does seem fun when you get into those group firefights. As a solo player, I have yet to encounter anyone else in the deep desert except once, although I do have to visit it a few more times. So my thoughts on it, I hope they really do release a lot more PvE content. But jumping over, we did have a developer comment here from Funcom. They went over to say, hey, while we can't spill what's coming just yet, there's stuff coming for both PvP and PvE enjoyers. For the immediate weeks though, they're focusing on stabilizing the game and addressing what's been reported, but after that they do have some stuff planned. So it seems like after a few weeks here, maybe within the next month or so, I would say around July, August, we could be seeing some more PvE and PvP content. I definitely think the end game needs to be fleshed out a lot, but as of right now, they do have some really nice bones and stabilizations with it. But yeah, I really do hope that we see a ton more PvP and PvE content. There's also another post here saying I think the game should adopt dungeons like Once Human. As they mentioned, the current end game is just PvP. And yeah, as of right now, I haven't even got much of PvP. In fact, I've never encountered PvP even once. As I mentioned, I've been in the deep desert a ton. I've been in a lot of the PvP sections. I've only encountered one other player, and it was in an ornithocopter. We chatted for literally 2 seconds, there was no hostile threat there, and we both went on our merry way. So I have yet to encounter a single instance of PvP, and I currently do have 65 hours in Dune Awakening. So I have played a ton. Maybe it's just my server, although I am on one of the more populated world servers. And I'm also on an RP server, so usually they do engage in PvP, albeit sometimes more friendly. But yeah, I really do think the game could use some more PvE content, as well as some more PvP endgame. Maybe even something like OPR from New World. I definitely hope they bring something there, as I do think that people are going to hit a roadblock eventually. Once they start hitting T5 and T6 gear, they're going to realize that endgame just needs to be fleshed out. So I do hope they kind of figure that out sometime sooner than later. Although, as they mentioned, they do want to flesh out the stabilization of the game, and I definitely agree that they do need to iron out a few other things. Speaking of PvP, there is one massive PSA warning here, as this post does mention that you should check your enemy faction's Landsrad buff, which you can do by the L key, and you should do that before going to the deep desert. Right now on their server, the enemy faction has a buff called the Right of Salvage. This makes it so that when you are eliminated in the deep desert, you drop all of your items. Yes, even your hotbar equipped items. And that can be looted by other players, which is just insane. This is literally like being eliminated by the worm. So if you do open up your menus, again, the L key will actually navigate you right to that, and you can check all the buffs there for the Landrad's buff. If you see the Right of Salvage, just be wary that you could lose everything. And if you weren't familiar what you actually do lose in the deep desert prior, maybe I'll do a deeper dive on the deep desert, but what you lose when eliminated in the deep desert normally is your inventory items, anything in your backpack that isn't equipped, to your extra gear, materials, loot, vehicles, container contents, items left in the ornithocopter storage or deployables, gathered loot, resources, dropped items that you pick up that didn't extract with, and your non-equipped gear. So anything you don't have in your actual equipped items. What you do keep normally is your equipped gear, weapons, all that, etc. Key items and unlocks, of course. And if you do store your ornithocopter in a vehicle backup tool before being eliminated, you won't lose that either. But again, if you see this buff on the Landsrad page, you will unfortunately lose everything. So do be very, very wary on that. Speaking of PvP, we have one other community mentionable here. This one is around the ornithocopter PvP. They're not really feeling it overall. I definitely do have some agreements here. I do think it is a bit of an odd choice for that PvP. I wish it was more grounded. Although, as I mentioned, I haven't really encountered it enough to have an opinion here. I am very curious on those that have encountered PvP, have dealt with both ground and ornithocopter PvP. How do you feel about that endgame so far? How do you feel that the system is handled? Again, I'll link to this post down below if you do want to give your thoughts there as well. But I am super curious as someone that has failed to find that at all. Although, speaking of the PvP kind of being the only endgame, Dune Awakening has still done very well with player count. In fact, its 24-hour peak hit 175,000 players, which that was as of yesterday. Sometimes we do typically see a higher spike today on Sunday. Again, depending on when you're watching this video, we might actually see a higher spike. It'd be pretty cool overall. We'll have to wait and see on that. One more last minute mentionable here. There is a new game companion app. This has a bunch of things here that you can utilize. Respawn timers, day and night cycles, vendor timers. So pretty cool with that one. I will link to it down below. There's also, if you haven't seen, a weekly schedule over on the Discord or the official Discord for Dune Awakening. When you head there, you can see the Landsrad and the Storm timers. That way you know when the map gets reset for the deep desert and the main area. And that will be happening, by the way, tomorrow at 7 p.m. And that storm will last all the way until 5 a.m. So there will be that reset timer in there. Overall, that should be all covered for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.